Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We're delighted to have you here with us this morning for our event on geospatial potential of statistical data. My name is Orla Fitzmaurice. I'm responsible for sustainable development and migration issues here at the Mission of Ireland. Of course, this being a statistics-focused event, I'm told that I can't make any statements that can't be measured. And so in the Irish way, our traditional greeting is 100,000 welcomes, not just welcome. So we're very pleased this morning to have a great programme lined up for you. We've got geohives and data mapping and all the other ways we can make statistics come alive for the SDGs. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, it's my great pleasure to extend a particular welcome to Minister Denis Naughton. Minister Naughton is Ireland's Minister for Communications, Climate Action and Environment. He is Minister with specific responsibility for promoting the SDGs and for overseeing their coherent implementation across government. Just yesterday, he presented Ireland's first voluntary national review, and so we're very pleased to have him join us here this morning to deliver some opening remarks. Minister.
Thanks very much, and welcome everyone this morning. It's great to see a large turnout here for an event titled Geospatial Potential of Statistical Data at 8 o'clock in the morning. I think you'd want your head examined to be rushing to something like this, but I have to say, as someone who uses statistics on a daily basis, I think having statistics in a usable format is so important. And I want to welcome each and every one of you here this morning to the Irish Mission for this co-sponsored UN Statistical Division event with the Central Statistics Office in Ireland. And the one thing that has really been great about the Central Statistics Office in Ireland down through the years is the verifiability of the actual data itself, that it is verified, that there's never any question over it. And you know, it's something that we sometimes take for granted, but it is very important in terms of developing policy, implementing policy and communicating with the public. As you know, I presented the VNR on behalf of Ireland yesterday and outlining our performance in relation to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And that really sets the baseline for us as a country and to progress from there between now and 2030. But of course you can only measure your progression if you have the mechanism and vehicle to do that. And the CSO is providing that, not just for Ireland, but for many other countries. And the Sustainable Development Goals are a priority for our government. But to be able to actually implement them, we need reliable, comprehensive data. And that's what this morning's event is about. The CSO has gone a step further beyond simple statistics, because statistics are great for number crunchers and for economists. But how do we actually use that to communicate a message to the public? And what the CSO have done is they're working with our national mapping agency, the Ordnance Survey of Ireland, to combine the SDG data into a geospatial information in a form of very innovative maps that people can actually picture and see what this data means in reality within their own community. So not just at a national level, a regional level, at a county level, but at their own individual community level, they can actually get a full breakdown of this data. And I know the CSO are going to be providing you detail in relation to that. And for us, as politicians, that's very important, and as a government, because if we're going to get buy-in from communities across the country in relation to those 17 goals, in relation to the 169 targets, then people need to know about the goals, need to know how those goals impact on them in their own community, and how they can actually see progress in terms of that. And I think, you know, the narrative that I've been trying to put out there among the communities across Ireland is that the Sustainable Development Goals are a bold vision. They're a bold vision by all of the countries of the world to have a better world by 2030. A world that is safer, that is fairer, more sustainable and more prosperous for everyone. And right across Ireland and many communities across the world, you know, how can we achieve that? How can we ensure that we rise all boats, and particularly those that have been left behind in the past, can we do more to equalise that differential that is there? And that's a challenge for me, not just as a national politician, but as a directly elected member of Parliament, to do that in my own constituency and bring the public in my own constituency with me. I represent the most rural constituency in Ireland. The biggest population in my constituency, the biggest urban population, is 6,500 people. So you can see the challenge that I have in a rural constituency in trying to deal with some of these global challenges and bringing them down to a very local level. I think the one way to do that is through storytelling, painting that picture, because statistics can only come to life through actual stories. I remember a senior politician back many years ago, and we were talking about inflation. And how do you explain inflation to a member of the public? And I was trying to grapple with this at the time. And he put it very simply to me. He said, inflation makes people poorer. And using that particular narrative, it's much easier to put that particular message across. Two practical examples that I want to give you before I sit down and keep quiet for the rest of the day. The first one is Ireland at the moment is introducing a nationwide ban on smoky coal. I think we'll probably be we're definitely the first country in Europe and probably one of the first countries in the world to do that. And one of the main reasons that we're doing that is that we have a particular problem. We have the fourth highest incidence of asthma in the world. 470,000 people in Ireland have asthma. 1 in 5 children in Ireland have asthma. So air quality, even though we have relatively good air quality, is still a big issue and is having a big drain on our health services. And for my constituents, I have 9,000 constituents who suffer from asthma. So bringing it down to my level and bringing it even further down to district level helps people to appreciate the significance and importance of banning the burning of smoky coal in their own community and the impact that that will have on quality of life. Another broader one that we're doing is that we're working with NASA in the Global Citizen Science Initiative, and our Environmental Protection Agency are doubling the number of ambient air quality monitoring stations across the country, and we're linking those up with individual schools. So the children in the local schools can monitor the air quality in their own area and see the impact on that in relation to health outcomes in that area. And what this data can do is show the actual health outcomes, because you can actually look at a progression in relation to the improvement of the quality, health outcomes and quality of life for people in tandem with an improvement in air quality, and bringing that down to the local level through local primary schools and secondary schools, because the best advocates we all have for the environment are our own children. And as you know, we have international recognition in relation to air monitoring in Ireland having the Mace Head monitoring station, which provides air quality data that is very significant in terms of the historical emissions from carbon into our environment. So I think stories are a very powerful way of connecting with people, of taking raw data, painting it into a picture, painting it into a usable format that people can understand, appreciate, and then look and see how we can progress and improve on that data and improve the outcomes for those communities, for the country, and for the global community as well. So the stories are very much individual stories about individual communities and about painting that picture. So I think what the CSO have done with this initiative is really innovative. I hope you can take something from this and hopefully be able to apply it in your own countries and in your own communities. And this data and these tools are only as good as the use that is made of them. A lot of resources have been put in by the Irish government, by the UN, by the Central Statistics Office, and a huge team behind this. But what we want to see is this actually used to tell those stories. So it now gives me great pleasure to ask Kevin McCormick from the CSO to outline in detail this particular initiative. Gormina Malga.
Okay, that's very good, because today when I moved the laptop, it went blank. So that's a good start that we're here. Thank you very much, Minister Naughton, for that, those kind words about the CSO. Now, in terms of the CSO, we're the Central Statistics Office. From discussion with our colleagues here in the Permanent Representative Office, CSO might mean a different name here, but we're CSO, Central Statistics Office. So thank you again for coming to this presentation. And as the Minister said, it's Ireland's innovative approach to monitoring SDG indicators through geospatial visualization. Okay, so how and why do we do this? Well, first of all is that there's a UNSD Esri research exercise. I see Greg Scott here at the front of the room here. He's part of that exercise. So the Irish CSO, in collaboration with Ordnance Survey Ireland and Esri Ireland, we're participating in this UNSD Esri research exercise. We see it as an example of both interagency and public-private sector partnerships. We commenced the exercise last year, it was May of last year, and the goal was to develop and deploy a new approach for monitoring the UNSD's SDGs using geographic information systems, and we're using the tag geospatial potential of statistical data. We know it's a mouthful, we know it's early in the morning, but hopefully through this presentation you'll get an understanding of what we mean by that. So, the role of the CSO. So we have a central role in identification, the management and the presentation of the data needed to meet the requirements of the SDG indicators. So we're the cold hard statistics office, so we're looking for good data that we can repeat, that's accurate, that's relevant, and is reflective of what we're trying to measure. So, because we're CSO, there's rules for the type of data that we can use, and it's called the generic statistical business process model. I'll only show you the slide, I'll move on quickly. It has 8 particular features to it. It's about developing the data, if you're doing surveys and so forth, and then when you get the data, how you make sure it's good data, how you evaluate the data, how you disseminate it, and so forth. So there is a rationale behind the way that we actually work in CSO. So then looking at our project team, okay, so to date what we've sourced information for 60 indicators. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that this is the geospatial potential of the data. We've taken the position that the data we're putting onto our portal at the moment will be a minimum nuts tree level. So in Ireland, and those of you who are from the EU, you recognise that's your regional data. So minimum level is nuts tree data. We have information for about 160 indicators, but only 60 so far we have up on our site because we can map them. In other words, there's some interest in the geospatial aspect of it. We've created about 100 plus data sets, and this is where our nuts tree is there. So we've got county and census local area geography, which I'll demonstrate later on. We've also developed the Ireland's SDG platform. Our Ordnance Survey colleagues that the Minister just mentioned, we work closely with them. They have their portal called the GeoHive. We're resting our data on their GeoHive. It's a government initiative, this GeoHive, so we're reusing technology that's already there. There's a link here to the website, which I'll use in a second, but I'll just continue on for 2 more slides. This is what the GeoHive platform looks like, quite complicated. There's data, there's mapping layers, they're all brought together and they're joined together in the portal. So that's the schema for it. Then in our portal, so we launched our portal at the European Forum for Geography and Statistics in the 2nd November 2017. We know for sure that our site's been well received across government, public sector and civil society. And the information contained on this portal will inform Ireland's progress against each goal. But we are clearly aware that we're the Central Statistics Office, so we handle the data and so forth. In terms of officially reporting on the progress, it's our colleagues from the Ministry, Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment. So they have the official responsibility for that. We see ourselves in a support role. So we're supporting the department with the information and also the dissemination tool that we're actually using on this one. So I'm just going to go back up to 2 slides. I'm going to hit the link here to go. The screen might go blank for a second until it settles in. Okay, so let me just do this, and then so here we are. So now we're live. So now we're onto our portal at the moment. We have, you come here, here's our branding on it. As you come down, excuse me, as we come down through it, what you'll find is we have information here. This site is containing 2 types of SDGs. Unfortunately, there are UN SDGs, there are regional SDGs called EU SDGs, and we'll also be producing national SDGs. So we have the one-stop shop. All our information is going to be in this portal, and they will be referenced. It's called tagging. We'll be able to look at it. If you're a UN SDG person, you can just pick your information from that. If you're an EU person, you can pick your information from that. Or if you're going to be a national one, you can pick your information from that. We currently don't have national SDGs on the site at the moment. It'll be coming on board around November of this year. But here we're actually instructing people around the content of the portal here. Going further down, you see here we're looking at the Ordnance Survey Ireland and CSO, and then the GeoHive is in the middle. So that's what we're doing. Now, in terms of the story maps, and our minister was just talking about telling a story. So further down, and I'll just scroll down here a tiny bit, you'll see all these little icons. Behind these icons, there's maps with data. It's actually quite boring for most people. Not boring to me. I'm a statistician. I kind of love this stuff. You know, there's data. There's APIs that can be pulled down for developers and so forth. Okay, but today is not for that. Today is for the stories. What we should do. Okay, so I've been at many presentations and I present on the data and people are falling asleep. So we understand the audience what they would like. So what we'll do here is that we come to these here, and these are story maps, but they're actually little apps. So one I'll come back to is this. So that's an app that we made for our colleagues from the DCCAE, just as a story map from the VNR from yesterday. But what we'll do is that we look at a story map that's relevant to Ireland. It's all about employment and employment at different levels. So I'll just move across here. Oops, sorry. Just I'm looking at sideways. So if I come across this one, yeah, that looks like it. It seems to be catching on my scroll, so bear with me when I just do this to him. Now, okay, there we go. So we just wait. Okay, so now a map. It's a story map. So remember, it's a map, but we have to tell a story. So the key thing about these story maps is that we have text, we have visualization. This is Galway, so if you're ever in Ireland, this is a party city. It's a wonderful place to go. Unfortunately, it can rain a lot, but if you're here and it's so hot, I think I'd rather Galway where it's cooler, so it's actually quite good. So here what you can see is that we'll have some text on the side. The side here is talking about employment and unemployment in Ireland, and we're linking to people. We can just move down to the text as we come down here, and you can see that we're referencing to the different goals. We see how 1 and 8 are the ones that this particular story map is focusing on. As we come down through it, we can just keep on scrolling down. Now, you'll see on the left-hand side is a bar, just on the left. You'll see the home. So we can scroll either down with a key, or your tab on your keyboard, or you can just click into them. So we just click there, and up comes a map. Give it a second, and there you go. There's a map. And this is the ILO unemployment rates at NUTS 3 regions. Okay, you can come to the map if you like. You can come in. Here, you can click on one of these. Okay, information will appear. You can actually zoom in. Up here. See, we can zoom in, we can zoom out. Now, while zooming in and zooming out is quite good, because it's NUTS 3, it's not hugely informative. So, in terms of the visualization, what we did, we went to our census colleagues. So the next one is about census. Okay, so we were very lucky in that in the middle of our work on this, census came with their data. Very detailed data. It goes from country to NUTS regions to counties to electoral divisions of around 200 to 300 households, somewhere in that bracket. So what we can do is we can zoom in. So if we take this map here, we can start to zoom. So these is unemployment rates, and the interesting one is for Dublin. I'll just come up to Dublin, so hopefully this will pan correctly. It's panning good. So the reason for that is that I want to zoom in, and I'll pan across. across is just me being desperate, panning on a laptop. So these are electoral divisions, small areas, and in capital cities, in all capital cities, there tends to be a divide in terms of employment and unemployment. So the green means good and the darker means bad. So the north side of Dublin has more unemployment than the south side of Dublin. And what you can do is, if you have targeted policies that you would like, you can measure it by zooming in. So any of these ones, we can come in here to this particular ED here. We can click this, and up comes the information around that ED, all the information that's in the background. Now, of course, we would have this map. You can download the data if you're interested in it, or you can actually download an app, an API, so you can actually bring it out from you. So this is the visualization of it. So if we see policy, and to measure, you have to manage, you must measure. So if you're measuring a policy, you have to manage it. So if you use this particular approach to it, you can see if unemployment has changed, in particular in electoral divisions, 2,000 to 3,000 households. If your policy is targeted to that, you can manage from here. You can then provide the information around that as you come through. So I'll just keep going. No, sorry, it just this here. So now what we have is that you can do a focus on poverty, okay? And it's a focus on the cities. So you can zoom into Dublin. And here you have unemployment and the numbers. So the bigger the circle, the bigger the numbers. And the darker, the higher the unemployment and so forth. So you're able to do the visualization very quickly, be able to take the information, repackage it in an engaging medium, such as these story maps. And then you have someone like me who's a cold hard statistician and normally bores people, and people are looking at what we're talking about. So that, to me, is a big step forward in terms of the Central Statistics Office. It's a dissemination tool. So initially, it was looked at just as a reporting tool, reporting upon the information that's actually there. But now, as you can see, because you can tell a story, it becomes a dissemination tool, which I think is actually quite good. So just keep going. So we went for, now you're linking poverty and unemployment rates together. Yet again, these are really, they can be zoomed in. You can go into Minister Nocton's constituency. You could zoom all the way into that one if you like, just to see how it's progressing, okay? So that's the kind of taking the information, looking at visualization, being able to get interactive maps and be able to get policy around it. So that's the kind of the cold hard statistics in terms of story maps. But the VNR was yesterday. We've been working with the DCC AE colleagues, and what we've been able to produce for them is also a story map. So we're taking it just exactly away from statistical data, and we're able to bring it into policy. Now, in the story maps, if there is just data, then the CSO, really, we have control of them because we're just talking to numbers. There's nothing else, we're just talking to numbers. Those story maps there, you can see we're just talking to numbers. The information that's on our site is open. We call it the crystallization of the openness of open data. That information is there, okay? So we're taking the information there. I won't use any information that's not open because people have to be able to repeat the exercise that we have done if they would like, and that's where that openness comes from. So then if we move away from just statistics and we look into the policy side of things, we looked at the VNR and then we produced a story map, but we pushed it back through the department and we got their sign off on it because there's a part of a policy in it. So we wanted to make sure we were clear on that. So I'll just come out of here and I'll go to another one, okay? I should just come back out, sorry. It's Wi-Fi, so sorry, it's the, okay. Great, we're back out. So here we go. So here's another story map. So we see ourselves as a support in the area of SDGs. Okay, we have responsibility making sure the data is good, it's repeatable, GSB, PM, and so forth, locking that down. So if people come to us with data, they're pretty clear who we are. I mean, I'm the guardian of the data, so I'm going to use statistical process, business management process to make sure the data is good. But then we come here and we're looking then at something else. So this is the policy side of things. So inside we'll have the text. So for those who understand the English, we're like magpies. Magpies like silver, and they keep on taking this stuff. So we're taking the information from other, and this is the VNR, and reusing it in a different medium. And here's what we have here. So on the left-hand side, we have the text, and as we scroll down through it, I'll just come into it. We'll see that. Okay, this is a message from our Prime Minister, which is called an Taoiseach in Irish. If we continue on, we have the message from Minister Naughton. So yet again, this has been lifted directly from their report. So their VNR report is electronic in terms of it's a PDF. It's a PDF. Okay. So we call in what we're doing here, we see PDFs as quite static, and what we're doing is we're making it quite active here, and it's also portable. So our colleagues from the DCCAE, they can just reference this. They can use it. So if they're at a conference and they have only 3 or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they can just come to here and they can get the flavour of what's going on. Going across the top here in the States, sorry. Okay. So this was a video that they produced in terms of the plan. We won't play the video because the sound is not working, but here's an example of suddenly you can catch something from and put it in as a video. Now you see that also this is a different touch to the story map. On the other story map, we had things coming down the left-hand side. Now we're coming across banners across the top. So there's flexibility in the styles of the story maps that are there in order to engage us and able to use the tool. So here's the SDG 1. So it's to end poverty in all its forms. So this map then it's just the Wi-Fi, it will just change its colours. There you go. And it's a nuts tree. And that's the information that we had from our labour force survey, which come with a nuts tree. So we're actually linking it to the policy that's actually there. All this information, of course, would have been previously supplied to our colleagues from the DCCAE, so no surprises. So as you can see, we can actually come across, we won't go through everyone, but it's just the example of what's there. And then you can jump to the conclusions. And that's the conclusion that's come from the VNR. So what we're doing is that we're taking the high level information and we're actually repackaging it. It's a new medium. From my perspective, being a statistician, and trying to find ways of engaging with the audience. And my particular approach to these story maps, I feel that we've actually jumped over a bridge, and now we're into the next stage of engagement. How you tell the story with statistics, visualization, maps, and so forth. We have a challenge going forward now in that I think we have data for about 160 SDGs. Some 95, 96 of them have some geospatial aspects, so we're going to jump another 30, but then the rest are just tabular form. So you can see we're practicing with the DCCAE and how we're going to do the tabular form by doing the VNR. So this is an example of us where we were getting our heads around the design. So how do you engage with people when it's just a table? You know, that's normally what puts people to sleep when you're dealing with CSO data, unfortunately. That's what happens. But here we see we have the opportunity to change that, to be able to engage people, even if the data is quite static. In other words, there's no regional aspect to it, I'm not going to get a map and so forth to it. The last pieces, and I just won't go back to the presentation because it's easier, is that, you know, are we doing it right? How do you know you're doing it right? We have governance approaches to it, okay? There's 3 governance boards involved in here. We have a team governance board that meets once a week, so Ordnance Survey Ireland, Esri Ireland, and CSO. Then we have quarterly meetings where we have officials group comes in, you know, which CSO chairs. So we have the department that we're talking about here. We have our Prime Minister's Department of Foreign Affairs have come, and most especially the people with the money come. Our Department of DPER, they're called, are part of our finance division. So they're there. Now, we, of course, see ourselves as CSO. We're not experts on everything. So we ensure, for example, if you have climate issues, you have Environmental Protection Agency are there, or other specific agencies or offices, and then we link to them, and we're working with them to get the authoritative data. So So they come and we discuss it, and then we'll actually put it on the site. But you need to collaborate with all of the stakeholders, because there's not one particular stakeholder who is expert in everything, and we don't see ourselves on that. So we're collaborating with as many stakeholders as we can on this. Finally, then there's an officials group that's hosted by the DCCAE, and both CSO and OSI are invited members. It's a policy group. We're CSO, we inform policy, we don't actually make policy. So there are times when CSO, it's appropriate for CSO to attend it, and we're invited, and our colleagues here from the DCCAE offered us the invitation, and we're quite happy to participate. Now, in terms of how we did it in Ireland, when you're starting something new, it's a sales pitch. You have to sell it. You have to engage with people, get them understand that you're an honest broker, you're not trying to take their information and repackage it as yours. So on our side, all the metadata reflects back to the original owners. Here, this is the VNR, it's the DCCAE VNR, that's what it says. It's not CSO's or OSI's VNR. So we're actually pushing back to the original creators of the information, be it text, be it tables, and so forth. It's yours, it's not ours. We're just repackaging it in a different medium. And because of that, then we've had great cooperation. Now, of course, we are a small country. We are Ireland. Most of us know each other. So I know it's a different environment than larger countries and complex situations. But this today was just an example about how far we have come, and certainly from my perspective as a statistician, how we can make the data come alive through the story maps. Thank you for your attention today.
Thank you, Kevin. I think now we really are moving from the local and the sub-local to the regional, and we're delighted to be joined with our partners from UN Statistics Division. We have Greg Scott here with us. Greg is head of the Environmental Statistics and Geospatial branch of UNSD. And I guess my first question for Greg to hear his thoughts is really this question of how we move to make the global reporting that you do relevant to the citizen. How do you capture the complex, interlinked, multifaceted humanity of 7.5 billion of us with 17 goals, and how do you make that relevant to the people in this room? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, it's great to be here, and let me start. Seeing a statistician excited with data and seeing statistical data come to life with geospatial information is really what this is about. And thanks, Kevin, and a great presentation. And just, that's a tough question, but really going back to the start, why did we begin this journey? And really it was as simple as thinking about 17 goals, 169 targets, 232 indicators. How do we manage all that, firstly, in terms of countries, when we think about a global aspirational set of goals, but the fact that they need to be implemented locally, that they have to be able to be measured and monitored locally, that we have to ensure no one's left behind at the most local level. And so how do you translate from global to local? And how do you take a global reporting mechanism and enable countries to see where that change takes place, where it's most important and most appropriate? And that was really what this journey was with this research exercise. We knew that the data was available. For many of us around the world, there is much data. The challenge is liberating it, bringing it to life, enabling it to be accessible and shared. The second part to it was that technology is no longer an enabler. If you've got a challenge, it is the enabler. And if you've got bandwidth, technology is able to do a lot, even in the most, the least developed countries. And so this process was then along the lines of, can we bring technology and data together as enablers and start telling stories? And so, as I think you've just seen from Kevin, there's some key messages there around the fact that you can tell stories in different ways, in different mediums, with different communication strategies, but at the end of the day, you're doing it with real data that sits at ground of truth, that sits at source, and is maintained and as custodian by the authoritative agencies. And it starts building this federated approach, this system of systems, as we call it, this ecosystem of data that can be brought together. And so that data at the very, very local level that you saw Kevin display in Ireland can be portrayed right up into the global level, into our own global UNSD hub that we've got, and now we're starting to use as our reporting mechanism for the global report as well. But that's only the start. And coming back to your question is, how do we then scale that out and take that across countries? And we've been using the Irish example of how we transfer these types of capabilities into developing countries as well. So our 6 original pilot countries were Ireland, Qatar, Senegal, well, Australia currently, yeah, that's my country, South Africa, the Philippines, and Mexico. And now we've scaled that out to a number of more countries, particularly from the developing world. The beauty of this is that it really is a case of organisations and governments, and this is the hard part, let's be honest, is getting the data conditioned, getting all of the data right so that it can be used in these types of systems. The good side to that is that what we saw there from Ireland in terms of story maps, pro formas, APIs, documents, is completely pick up and transfer. That's the good thing about these sorts of things, and that's the approach that we're taking with this. The hardest part of all is just liberating the data and countries understanding the value proposition that comes with this, and then having the will and the capacity to be able to do some of these transformational changes within their countries. But this was a very much an experiment. A year ago, just over a year ago, we started this. It was an experiment that's now coming to life. But it needs a lot more, I guess, exposure in terms of countries and hearing the Minister talk about how he understands that now is critically important. Using the data as a spreadsheet or a table just doesn't work. Using it to tell stories, and the stories that are linked to policy, is really what's going to be critical.
Thanks, Kevin. I think it really is that question at this time of data can mean all of this excitement and information and democracy, and data is also something frightening when we see, your online footprint and data privacy and all of that. And I think the authenticity of the data and the verifiability of it is something that's incredibly important. You spoke about storytelling as well, and just one quote I came across that really spoke to me when we were preparing for this was from E.M. Foster, who said, the English novelist, who said, "We're not concerned with the very poor, they're unthinkable, only to be approached by the statistician or the poet." And actually, I think if you're approached by the statistician and the poet, well, you've got the world in your hands, and if we can, we are leaving no one behind. We should be targeting our statisticians and our poets and our storytellers towards all of these people.